And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Singularity Lab. We've got an absolutely killer show. If you love stories about science, technology, and futurism, you are in the right place. We even had some folks that said they wanted to bump up a couple IQ points, and that's why they're here. So I can't promise you that's going to happen, but I can promise you that we've got an amazing show. And here are our co-hosts, Luis Jimenez from the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Luis, how the heck are you?
I'm good, man. What the hell is that supposed to mean?
Which part?
They're here to bump up a couple IQ points. What is that supposed to mean, Michael?
It's because we have David Brin in the house today, who I'm going to give an introduction to in a second, and he's kind of a big deal. He's kind of a smart guy. I'm just gonna
I can't wait to talk to him.
And then we've also got a guy with an IQ probably much bigger than our own, Brooks Lopez. Brooks,
I don't know about all that. I doubt that, but I appreciate it. Thank you, Michael. Hey,
Either way, that being said, we are going to kick off our show today the way we always kick off here at the Singularity Lab. We're going to talk about a cognitive bias that you should be aware of. Today's cognitive bias is the framing effect. You allow yourself to be unduly influenced by context and delivery. And it doesn't matter how many IQ points you have, you too probably are a victim of advertising. And so when you think about the framing effect, for example, I'll give you a quick example here. One example would be in a marketing campaign. One might say 10% fat is in our yogurt, or one might say it's 90% fat free, which sounds better, which is framed in a way that makes you more likely to consume said product.
So this is the old glass half full thing, huh?
Ish. Yeah. Well, yeah, that would be a form of framing, right? If it just depends on how you look at it.
What happened to the good old days of slipping in like a picture of a hot dog during a movie? Remember they used to do that in the movie theaters?
Yes, and the popcorn too, right? They were just subliminal messages.
Like literally one frame in the film, and then that they were like, "Oh, our concessions have gone up by 40%."
You're saying single frame, so you're talking about like subliminal messaging.
Yeah,
of
they
hot
used to
dogs.
do that. They used to do that in movie theaters. Yeah,
absolutely did. I'm sure, and I mean not just that. We were talking very briefly about Project MK Ultra earlier. You want to talk about subliminal messaging? I mean.
Ooh, yeah, we'll dig into that. Welcome everyone, Simon Fly, good to see you, the little goat. Christopher Plain says, "Love me some Brooks Lopez." Brooks is building some fans. Chris Pratt meets Rather Be Squidding. Hi, Brooks.
Oh, that's a good one. Chris Pratt meets Rather.
My wife hates to hear that. She's going to be really excited.
Which she hates to hear that you look like Chris Pratt.
Well, because I do actually get it sometimes, and quick story, but we got stopped in New Orleans, and I got pulled into a bar and given a bar tab because someone said they thought it looked like Chris Pratt. So she drives her nuts. So just keep it up, please.
The new Jurassic Park movie is coming out. I'm sure you could probably open a few tabs when that drops.
Yeah, he's also playing Mario.
I don't know how I feel about that.
You ever heard that, Lou?
No.
Oh yeah.
From Super Mario Brothers?
Yeah. He is an Italian American, so he apparently can get away with that.
Wait, Chris Pratt or Brooks?
Chris Pratt. I'm certainly not. So.
Wait, okay. So just to be clear, Chris Pratt is making another movie. There's a Super Mario Brothers?
CGI. It's not going to be the sweet 90s redux.
Yeah. Because I remember that John Leguizamo debacle.
Debacle? That's a classic.
All right, get out of here, Brooks. get the hell out of here.
All right, so without further ado, we've got an amazing guest for you all today. For those of you who don't know, David Brin is an astrophysicist whose international best-selling novels include The Postman, Earth, Existence, and Hugo Award winners Startide Rising and The Uplift War. He consults for NASA, other companies, agencies, and nonprofits about the onrushing future. Brin's first nonfiction book, The Transparent Society, won the Freedom of Speech Award. His new one is Vivid Tomorrow, Science Fiction and Hollywood. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, David Brin. Ooh. There he is.
You're already, the banter I've heard from you guys, especially Lou and Brooks, has garnered you your first of many thumbs up.
Well, thank you.
That's all we were hoping for. We were just looking for some likes. So thank you for doing that. David, we're really excited to have you here. And we'd love to, if you could give folks maybe a quick breakdown. You are an astrophysicist. You're a sci-fi writer. What's your first love?
Well, I was born into a family of writers, and it was always assumed I'd do that. And my hobby when I was at Caltech, to ease the pressure, was I started my first novel then. And my second one, my sophomore year later, became my third novel, The Practice Effect, which is all sorts of fun. And I like to vary around fun and then serious stuff back and forth. Above my head is a Jim Burns painting that was the cover for my first novel, Sundiver. But when I was 7 years old, I was taken to Griffith Park Observatory to see Sputnik. And ever since then, I've been astonished to live in a civilization that is so unlike all the previous ones. The fundamental human tendency is to be delusional and to assume, to find evidence for whatever it is you want to believe. You talk about cognitive biases on the show. And when we were in pyramidal shaped structures dominated by a few at the top, their delusions dominated policy without criticism. And that resulted in the horrible, horrible litany of errors called history. If you ask science fiction authors what they have studied more, very few are technically trained as I am. But all science fiction authors have studied human history. And so sci-fi was poorly named. It should have been speculative history, because our stories extend this horrible, horrible story, and yet encouraging story of clawing our way upward the last 6,000 to 10,000 years. And when I became aware of all that, I realized that I was a member of a civilization, even in the 50s, that was trying for the first time to do something new. And that is raise and train and develop a very large component of the population whose job it was not to prove what they hoped was true, but to find out what was true. And I so wanted to be part of that. I still believe, despite our current civil war, I still believe that's the path to saving the world and saving humanity and possibly saving the galaxy. So that was a long way to answer your question. I was determined to become a part of that community whose habits are manifested in the sacred incantation, Catechism of Science, I might be wrong. Or the longer version, I might be wrong. Ain't that cool? Let's find out. And that's, I think, the greatest form of human guts, to say my beloved delusions might be wrong. Let's find out. So I struggled hard to become a scientist, and I got my union card stamped at Caltech and UCSD, and I did good work. The current theory of comets is mine. But all the time there was this hobby. And when I published my first novel, it looked like I was going to be hectored to focus on that. And when my second novel won every award there was, I started realizing civilization wants me to do this more and science less. So does that answer your question?
It does. It does. So was that, I mean, obviously you were attracted to what the world wanted, but is that what you wanted too?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I was raised by wolves. Many of us were. And I hope my kids don't feel that
you're in great company in this group.
Yes, yes.
Most definitely.
Well, look, the fact is that we are cavemen, scratching and clawing our way out of muck and mire. And the more you know about history, the more you realize that we owe both sympathy and no loyalty to our ancestors, who made mistake after mistake, sometimes with the best of intentions. The Carthaginians sacrificed babies to Baal, thinking that it was the right thing to do. And gradually we've reached the point right now where we're a civilization that is capable of making beings a lot wiser than ourselves. We're doing that culturally already through the mythologies of Hollywood. We're doing it already through the simplest form of human augmentation, which is simply giving almost all the world's children enough food and basic education so that they conceive of something greater than the village. But we're also doing it with something I consulted just now with the Australian Defence Department with new forms of human augmentation. I talk about those in my novel, The Postman. And that's a plot element that Kevin Costner left out, and that's fine. And we're doing it in inventing AI. So a civilization that's capable of all those things is amazing. What an amazing time to be living in, and to be able to contribute at least a little bit to reason and science and reasonableness becoming major forces in our decision making.
You kind of started the conversation with this hierarchical structure of human civilization and how the leaders and their delusions permeated through society and really led people in whatever direction civilization was going. We've technologically advanced so far, yet we still have so much misinformation and disinformation out there. Do you see what delusions do you see still permeating through society that are negative as we march on in our technological progress?
Oh, well, you just asked a real mouthful. I mean, a couple of hours worth in each of those. First off, the pyramidal social structure. This evolved out of fundamental male reproductive strategy. And that is, if you can exclude other males from reproducing and taking their women and their wheat, you have more offspring. And we are all descended from the harems of guys who pulled that off. There is evidence that 12 to 10,000 years ago, just as agriculture was really kicking in, there was a major winnowing of the Y chromosome, and that very small fractions of males were reproducing. All the females were, because we're seeing their descendants, but very few males.
We're much taller now.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, you see, there were witnesses to what probably happened in this form of explorers who visited and sat around the campfire and talked to, Captain Cook. He was very friendly to King Kamehameha. They became friends, even though Cook was dead within 2 weeks. There have been plenty of eyewitnesses to what probably happened all over 12,000 years ago, and that is the simultaneous arrival of kings and beer. Both of those mediated by agriculture, because when you have agriculture, you have larger populations, so the king is higher on the pyramid. He doesn't answer to some little council, right, tribal council. He answers to nobody. So when he saw somebody getting drunk and behaving boorishly, he said, "Kill him, bring me his women." Woof! All right, well, the fact that some of your listeners are having fantasies about that right now is evidence that we're descended from the harems of those guys. Get over it, guys. Or better yet, do what my wife tells me, and that is, you go ahead and have your little fantasies. What I care about is how you behave. And if you can behave like a decent man, most women are willing to pat you on the head and say, "Don't tell me about what's going on in that festering inside that cranium. Just be a hero." So, all right. So that leads us to the second half of your question. And, let me just, as an aside, say that these pyramidal societies ruled and governed extremely badly. leading to that horror called history. And there were a few bright candles in that story that we can talk about later, called Periclean Enlightenment experiments. And these were an alternative attractor state that is available to humans. Mind you, male mammals behave like this all across nature. Elephant seals monopolize harems, male chimpanzees. Occasionally, you have some rare cases like bonobos in which the females stand up for themselves, and also the elephants. But for the most part, there's every reason to believe that this is a failure mode that pervades almost all intelligent life forms across the galaxy and may help explain the Fermi paradox. But we humans lucked into an alternative attractor state. It's very rare, but it's incredibly fecund and creative. It's called the Periclean Enlightenment. And Pericles talked about it in Thucydides in his funeral oration. And when these happen, you have flattened social structures. You have the ability to debate, to call into question each other's delusions, a diamond of society. And these are always the times when later civilizations say that was a renaissance. That was an incredibly creative time. And that's what we're in right now. And that's what a world oligarchy is determined to snuff out. So the second half of your question is about what messages we get that are either positive or negative. And that's what my book, Vivid Tomorrows, is all about. How science fiction spreads memes and messages that arguably saved all our lives. We're here now because of science fiction cinema. Warnings like Dr. Strangelove, On the Beach, Fail Safe, War Games, and others that arguably staunched failure modes that would have led to nuclear war. The China Syndrome, the pandemic movies, the granddaddy of them all called 1984 that helped us to maintain our freedom. So do I say that science fiction plays an important role? Yeah. Yeah, later on ask me what those messages from Hollywood are, because there are 4 positive ones and 2 extremely negative ones. So we can talk about that.
I'd actually love to jump into that.
Direct segue, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean that's something that you hear. Like you have a huge amount of polarization going on in this country and around the world when it comes to left and right politics. And you have very differing opinions about Hollywood. Some would argue with you and say that Hollywood is actually poisoning us, but you believe that there are positives to be had here. Can you kind of go into that?
Yeah, well, I'm rather infamous for saying that we're in phase 8 of the American Civil War right now. It's the phase 4, the one in the 1860s, got all the movies and Ken Burns, specials and all of that, and it killed the most people. But it goes back to 1778 when Clinton and Cornwallis went down to Charleston in South Carolina because they knew they would find more romantics down there and more people loyal to the king. So this American Revolution was largely a civil war, phase 1 of the Civil War. We're in arguably the 8th phase, and so far it's not very hot. But if I were you, I would stay indoors on April 19th. But that's a completely other story. You asked about the messages purveyed by Hollywood. All right, well, there are 4 main intentional messages that you'll find in almost every film you ever liked. Suspicion of authority. There has to be an authority figure for the protagonists to oppose. And it can be invading our aliens, Independence Day, or it can be a snooty, nosy mother-in-law. But there's some kind of authority figure to be opposed. And this is one of the biggest reasons why China especially is really, really does not like Western films. The second is diversity, and tolerance is third. Fourth is individual eccentricity. Usually at the beginning of most of the films you've enjoyed, the protagonist bonds with the audience by expressing some eccentric trait. And here's what's amazing. It doesn't have to be the audience member's eccentric trait. It's the fact that the protagonist is getting some kind of crap for being an eccentric individualist that helps the audience bond. Now, here's where I get sour looks when I'm relating this in person, because not only did we suckle all of these messages from Hollywood growing up, making us who we are, but we're also taught to think, I invented suspicion of authority. Me and my small group are the ones who can see through the plots. And all you sheeple out there on the other side of what is badly misnamed a left-right divide, it's not, but it is a cultural divide. All you sheeple out there are being controlled, but I can see through it. And I get real sour looks from some people who, because I just described them, they absolutely believe that they and their small coterie of
have the truth, have the facts. They figured it out.
This.
Right.
Now, you asked about whether or not this has deleterious effects. And as a matter of fact, these four messages, which are the foundations of our freedom, they're the foundations of our ability to hold our elites accountable, to criticize assumptions. These are being used against us. Enemies of this Enlightenment experiment have learned how to get all sides of our cultural divide thinking, I have to oppose the authority figures on the other side. And they are the only authority figures who are dangerous. Mine aren't. So you have people on the right assuming that the only direction you can get Big Brother from is snooty academics and faceless government bureaucrats. People on the left saying the only possible threat is conniving oligarchs and faceless corporations. If you stop it and look at it that way, you know they're both right. But they are, during a phase of civil war, they are incapable of saying the magic phrase, you hold my elites accountable, I'll hold your elites accountable, because we both have to admit you've kind of got a point. That is the element that has been neutralized, and I think very deliberately.
And you think that is continuing to be done so in order to
absolutely
keep... Okay.
It definitely happens on what is sometimes mislabeled the left, but it is almost universal on the other side. There are almost no media on the other side that do not push this notion that the fact-using professions are enemies of the people. Those who science teaching, journalism, civil service, all the way to the military and intelligence agency officer corps, who are now derided by their former admirers as being a so-called deep state, because you have to neutralize those who would use these evil things called facts. But that, I didn't mean to get all political on that. There are also two messages that Hollywood purveys that are wrong and evil and harmful without the oligarchy having to warp them at all. So at some point we could get to that. But there's four messages that you'll find in every film that you liked. suspicion of authority, tolerance, diversity, and eccentricity. Those are fundamentals that are being warped, but they're fundamentally healthy things to teach our children.
Right.
Do you see technology being a gateway to, I want to say, like a third way of thinking, like a more middle ground, progressive way of thinking? Because I feel like there's it almost feels like there's a shift coming, where you've got these extremists on both sides, and now I feel like there's a segment of society going, I'm just tired of hearing these extremist views. Why can't both be right? Why can't we come into the middle here and find some common ground?
Well, I think that there is a large segment, close to a majority of Americans, who do respect facts and do want progress, but want progress that's negotiated, which is the new N word. I believe that one of the factions contains troglodytic, anti-logic, anti-fact people at its far wing. The other one consists now entirely of people who rage against every fact-using profession. So I believe that the demographic you're talking about, Lou, exists. The problem is that it's necessary for one of the sides in the Civil War to experience large numbers of defections into that middle. And you keep seeing hints at it. You keep seeing folks on that side trying to get free of the cult on that side, and then being severely punished and lacking the guts to do it. But it may happen this year. It may happen that a consortium will form over there. But your listeners aren't here to listen to me go on about politics. The two messages that are in Hollywood films, and you'll recognize them immediately, that are always harmful and unnecessary, are not there because the directors and the actors and the authors believe it, but because it makes life easier for them. It helps them to be lazy plotters. And one is, no institution can ever be trusted. And the other is, all your neighbors are useless sheep. Now, why do we see this in so vastly many films? Because your need as an author or a director is to keep the audience or the reader in pulse-pounding jeopardy for 90 minutes or 600 pages. And it's a bummer if she, after the initial scene, bravely escaping the bad guys in the initial scene, can dial 911 and immediately skilled professionals leap to her aid. I mean, talk about a buzzkill. I mean, okay, man, that was really great how you, as an amateur, you just really handled that first scene really well. Okay, we'll take over from here. No. You have to keep her in jeopardy for the whole 90 minutes. That means you have to separate her from meaningful help, from a civilization that has hundreds of thousands of skilled members of the protector caste ready to leap to aid. So the 911 call must not get through. If it gets through, they're incompetent. If they are competent and send help, it arrives late. It arrives on time, it is incompetent. The cops are incompetent. And if they arrive and they're competent and on time, then they're in cahoots with the bad guy.
Right.
Now, there are people who have given us films in which they found a clever way to separate the protagonist from meaningful help. One of my favorites was Julia Roberts' film, Sleeping with the Enemy. Wonderful movie about toxic masculinity. She's married to a guy who is just insane. And at the end of the movie, he's knocked unconscious, the good guy, and he approaches her to do whatever, and she has a gun on him. And she has the phone, and he says, okay, fine, I give up for today. Call the cops, get a restraining order. You really think that's going to work? So he's basically saying, yes, you're a member of a civilization that will do all these things for you. They're not going to stop me. And you hear her saying to the phone, hello, police, please send a car to 9464 Smith Lane. I've just shot an intruder. And the realization look on his face is as good as Alan Rickman's in Die Hard. Mm-hmm. And that's what you really want. You want your villain, who's been ranting through the whole film, to not just die, but have a moment of realization.
A bit of an epiphany.
Yeah. And then that's a little bit of advice I give my writing students. But that's an example of where 911, is cleverly eliminated. You separate your protagonist from meaningful help cleverly. In Sundiver, I did it by there's only one ship that's capable of going down into the sun. Well, it's a little hard to call for help in that case.
Great. Talk to us a little bit about. I'm curious. So you said you were talking about the 8th phase of Civil War. I'm very curious moving forward. To what level, like when you think of technology and technological growth, obviously the show is called the Singularity Lab, and we talk a bit about the technological singularity. What does that mean to you? And do you see this as part of this Civil War, or do you see it as an optimistic future? Like, what is your vision for the technological singularity, or at least technological growth, and how it relates to human civilization?
Well, when I give talks at, say, CIA or Australian defense agencies and things like that, I have a core slide that shows half a dozen ways that past civilizations have failed on the left. And on the right, it shows half a dozen new ways to fail.
That we've yet to discover.
That we're coming up with that science fiction has barely warned us of in time. And maybe there are some we haven't. That's my job. Sorry. And in my more serious novels like Earth and Existence, and I'm sure down below they'll put in below the chat below this wonderful trailer for my novel Existence that is about how things might go wrong. But the two bookends for these lists of ways in which we might fail, older ways like being outcompeted or ecologically harming our ability to support our population, and new ways, cyber, nano, bio, and renunciation is another, and that is that we might get so scared that of the future that, as some in our society wants us to do, we renounce progress, and that's not going to work. We have to charge ahead. It's the only way across the minefield. But in any event, the bookend concepts are the Fermi paradox, why we don't see signs that the galaxy should have been occupied by advanced civilizations long ago, and Earth would have been visited, and we could have seen that evidence of that in our rocks. So we know it's been sparse. And the other is the singularity. Now, I'm going to admit something to you, a confession. I've written none of the stuff that I'm supposedly wrote. I'm a front man for alien von Neumann probes in the asteroid belt and AIs that are already existing and are scared of us because of what we've depicted doing to them in the movies. I will tell them, shut up. I just had a tooth removed, and it was the principal way that they coerced me. So you're going to try another one? They think I'm joking. You see?
Yeah.
Shut the hell up, or maybe they'll start taking it seriously. Anyway, so I've written singularity stories. Post-singularity stories are really hard because you have to portray a future in which everything and everybody is more brilliant than you are. So you have to find ways to imply it.
Right.
And so I have a story called Stones of Significance that's collected in my latest book, The Best of.
Are these short stories, or are these all?
These are short stories,
okay.
Yes. And in Stones of Significance, we've totally succeeded. I mean, AI have been incorporated as part of what it is to be human in this layering effect that's gone on for 1 billion years. We share the cerebellum with fish. We share a mammalian cortex with other mammals. But then on top of that, we layered the primate cortex. And on top of that, we layered the only thing we have that no one else has, and that is the prefrontal lobes, which allow us to envision the future possibilities. And so this layering, I mean, there are those optimists who think that that's how we'll get AI, is by simply layering on the only known form of intelligence that we know exists, and that's us. So I depict that in that story, Stones of Significance. And I have a few other post-singularity stories, but it's hard to write post-singularity. The far more common you see stories about an incipient singularity that's about to happen or is starting to happen or threatening to happen wrong. And, the paperclip notion that AI may emerge and become totally ruthlessly intelligent, except when it comes to programming itself out of doing something stupid. But I have an answer, and I believe that it should be enough to keep the AI from becoming Skynet. First, let me say that Skynet is unlikely to come from the military. The military, they very much, the generals like to have off switches. The place where I deeply fear AI emerging from is Wall Street. Each of the top 10 Wall Street investment houses and banks invests more into AI research and development than the top 20 universities combined. Wow. And the fundamental premise is not do not allow a human being to come to harm, obey except to harm a human being.
And laws of robotics.
I've channeled Isaac Asimov, by the way. I wrote the last novel in his universe called Foundation's Triumph. So I really, really know the 3 laws of robotics and their implications and what Isaac was implying, the direction of his series. No, the ethos that's being inculcated in these proto-AIs at the Wall Street investment houses is parasitical, predatory, utterly insatiable, amoral, and secretive. And these are all of the traits we don't want the new AIs to have. And there is one simple law that would prevent it from emerging there. And that is called a Tobin tax, a 0.01% tax on all financial transactions. You would not notice it. It would be pennies for you. But for these high-speed stock trading programs, it would be death. Yes, I'm talking to you.
That's the office space theory, right? That the tiny transactional accounts would add up to a dramatically enormous sum, orders of magnitude larger than anything else.
Superman 2 also, the
Fortress of Solitude.
Richard Pryor character manages to funnel all the 0.01 cent rounding errors to himself. But I mean, this would be a source of income, but it would do is it would give advantage back to humans traders. And it would take away the desperate race to make AI with all of those traits. So there's a possible singularity, bad singularity, and the simple way it might be prevented.
I think that's important because a lot of folks, when they think about the singularity or they think about AI, their greatest fears are movies like Terminator 2 and Skynet, when in reality, algorithms and what are being built in order to create wealth. I mean, that's really the bottom line. We talked about the framing effect earlier when talking about cognitive biases. And, you know, I'm a digital marketer by trade, by day, and I'm fully aware of not only the cognitive biases that we use every single day in order to promote products, but additionally the algorithms that are used to disperse that information. And so we're constantly engineering the way people think. And I think a lot of folks, they miss that piece of the puzzle when in fact they're scared of this sort of militaristic AI awakening. And I think our fears are misplaced.
Yeah, the dangers are going to come from places where science fiction warnings have either been ignored or not noticed, not adequately addressed. I mentioned On the Beach, Failsafe, Dr. Strangelove. I talk about in Vivid Tomorrows how we're probably alive today because the failure modes for accidental nuclear war that were revealed in each of those pieces of media were noticed. At the time, the officers said that's ridiculous, and then when they retired, they said that scared the crap out of us, and we changed our procedures. China syndrome, virus movies. If you think we've done very badly with COVID, look at it as actually, by science fiction terms, very low death rate drill. And we got those vaccines in less than a year. That's got to be daunting to anybody who was planning biological warfare.
I like how you kind of frame that as a drill, COVID as a drill. I love that because I think if we do get hit with a virus that, say, kills children at that rate or an even larger rate, that I think but not only an economic standpoint, but from a domestic standpoint, I think a lot of people be pretty prepared to handle that, or at least get into that mode
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the fact is that we were all wiping everything down with Clorox at the beginning, and it turned out that COVID does not work through fomites.
The people who were microwaving their mail and then blowing up their microwaves, that's got to be my favorite, though.
Yes, but you know, a time may come when that is the case.
Right. But well, that's a good point too, because we could actually be inadvertently because we made so many mistakes that we would be less wary of another pandemic.
Well,
right? I mean, that's a possibility.
What we do is we would be more aware of the trade-offs, and then much will depend upon whether or not we've solved the deliberately, I believe, induced dysfunctionality of our systems for negotiation. Again, that N word again. If we can get past a deliberately induced crippling of our normal processes of fact-based negotiation, then what we've done is we've developed a huge suite of capabilities. Now, I am not promising you that we won't join all the other failed civilizations across the galaxy and help explain the Fermi paradox, but I see reason to believe that we're different. I believe, and this is going to shock you, that there is every reason to believe that humans are unusually reasonable and pleasant people compared to what we would have gotten if the first sapient species were bears or wolves or tigers, elephants even. It may very well be the galaxy needs us to get out there and rescue everyone else, in which case we'll be the ancient ones, the ones that are mythologized in science fiction, who first crossed the galaxy and helped everyone to get past their crises. I have another story in this best of anthology called The Giving Plague that was a Hugo nominee, that is about viruses and the trade-offs involved in them. But I mentioned a book that is another one of the books I came out with last year. And this one, there are a lot of people who have sent me death threats over this one.
Oh.
Yeah, there is nothing that enrages people more than supposed comedies that did not make them laugh. I spent $10 on this, and damn you, Brin. It was corny and, well, I'm sorry. There are other people who thought it was hilarious.
We all need corny occasionally.
Yeah, well, it's got some real terrible puns. It's basically a Star Trek pastiche
with dad jokes
set on a world where vampires and zombies and lycanthropes and several dozen other types are totally real phases of life.
And Netflix hasn't picked this up yet? That's
think
a surprise to me, honestly.
It would be so much fun, but then again, comedy is hard, and all I guarantee from that one is that you will groan. You will either groan in delight, or you will groan in hatred of me. And I'm going to put down the address for this one.
Well, I'm buying this right now as we speak. I want you to know that because
in the chat. So did I give you the impression that I was all about serious science fiction?
I'm gonna put the link for that in the main chat. You put it in the private chat. I'm gonna put it in the public chat. But we have a question here for you, David, from Christopher Plain, who is also a science fiction writer, by the way. What is the single largest scientific breakthrough you expect to see in your lifetime? Fusion, discovery of ET life, or Soylent Green?
Well, I think Soylent Green is absolutely going to happen in a sense, in that we will get bioreactors for our kitchens that grow meat. And it will help to save. This was predicted back in the 1950s by Poland Kornbluth, that this notion of growing meat in reactors and then shaving it off and selling it, and so that the karmic burden of the one animal who contributed those cells is extremely thinly divided among all of the people who eat it. But you'll get a reactor in your kitchen that grows meat, and one thing nobody talks about is where you get this feedstock for that meat. Well, what better food than that cuticle you just took off? So it's not only what's it called? geez, I'm having a senior moment.
You talking about Soylent Green?
Well, it's not only eating people, it's eating yourself.
So it's auto cannibalism.
It's autophagy.
I did see that there were rabbis who have approved that all cloned meat will be considered kosher, regardless of whether they are cloven-hoofed ungulates or, I guess, self-cannibalism would be considered. It was a blanket statement. I'd have to find the article, but it would be kosher.
Can you find me a person who has not swallowed a piece of cuticle? And you are swallowing bits of your gum and tongue and palate of your mouth every minute.
Well, it's just recycling then.
Of course it is. And so if it is determined that this is a perfect food, then why would it not be moral to do that and zero karma? So there's a prediction for you, and I predicted the current trend away from meat, and it is a planet saver. I haven't converted completely because I'm obstinately anti being forced to fit a particular. Sorry about this. It's going to ring 3 times.
Is that a landline? Do you have a landline?
I have a landline. Sorry.
Call from.
So anyway, well, yes, there are many possibilities. What I'm not hugely sanguine about is fusion. Yeah, over the long term, but there are just too many problems with the conversion of the heat into useful power for it to be really a near-term rescue.
You see it as potential is 30 years away, as always.
Well, I think we're getting closer. It's just like Zeno's paradox. We're suddenly realizing that it was always a lot harder. But that doesn't mean it's. I'm a member of NASA's Innovative and Advanced Concepts program, and so we give grants for various things. And so, there are advances in space that are going to be fabulous. Elon has done, and you know what? The people who appointed, like Obama, who ordered NASA to switch their preference from the old fart metal builders to upstarts. I mean, that was basically what rescued Elon and gave us what's been happening here, and so I think there are all levels of society that deserve some credit if we do make it, and that is still an open question. So, do we have time for one more question or two?
Absolutely. You tell me how much time you have. We're going to be going on for another hour here, but it's up. You can stay as long as you like.
Well, I have to at least check with my family whether we're going to Costco.
I'm just thrilled.
Damn you, Costco!
I'm just thrilled. It's a question between us and Costco. That makes me very happy.
No, but the thing is, it's mediated by the news, of course. I mean, it's the next 3 or 4 days that Putin is ready. Now, I believe in wagers. I think that they are the thing that is not being used to corner liars and misinformation junkies in our society, because when you corner the misinformation junkies with demands for wagers over specific facts, specific ones, they always run away. They become desperate, they panic, because you've caught them between their favorite incantatory porn and the two things they love most, which is money and macho.
Not fear-mongering?
So they always run away. So, I would offer a wager, 2-to-1 odds, we will not have a war in Ukraine. But that's not good enough odds not to go to Costco.
That's fair. Get that $1.50 hot dog that they refuse to increase the price on.
Canned goods.
That's well, but are we not taking odds that the Costco hot dogs are not already Soylent Green?
Well, they don't have anything really resembling meat.
And we have no idea how else they've kept them $1.50.
Actually, that's not true. They last I checked, they were Hebrew national.
Yeah, those are 100% beef hot dogs over there at Costco.
Yeah, no, they're the real deal. But
and Lou would bet on that.
Well, my stepdad loves reminding me it's a great deal for lunch. It's $1.50, $1.50 for a hot dog and a Coke. Where else you gonna get that?
There are things I stopped eating and doing 15 years ago because they're just not wise. For me at my age.
Can you email me that list? I have a feeling I already know what the list is.
Yeah, I'm afraid it is. But you just teach yourself to really, really, really like salads. You know,
I like salads, but
I like them. I've eaten 5 pounds of carrots a week since I was 10.
Wow.
So, and that helps explain why this is not my father's 70. But it's still 70. So let's have a question.
Yes. All right. So I have a question. Let's you guys have a question, or you want me to? Because I have like 1,000 still. But
go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, you wrote an article pretty recently. Not pretty recently. It was July of 2021, I believe, where you do some speculation on UFOs and UAPs. You take a look at the facts. You were actually somebody who helped write the protocols for the SETI program, which I'm curious about too. If you still think radio technology is something we should be searching for extraterrestrial life. But that being said, what are your thoughts on UAPs and UFOs? Where you at?
Well, first off, I've been involved in SETI for almost 50 years, and I'm one of the mavens in SETI who resigned from all the committees in protest when a group within the SETI community canceled the second SETI protocol, which I had helped write, which said basically no one should be beaming Yoo-hoo messages out there until after we've held a real international conversation about whether or not that is a very good idea. And I'm going to put in chat my explanation for why it's probably a good idea, as Liu Cixin says in his epic recent science fiction Hugo Award-winning novel, The Three-Body Problem, that maybe we should be a little quiet for a while until
don't attract the predators.
Yeah, well, we should just look. We're learning so much about the galaxy, so much. And wow, there's a plug for my wife's book. That's fabulous.
Isn't that what you just put in here?
Yeah, I'm going to. She just had a novel this year, and I'm going to put it in the chat also. But
I think you put that in the chat inadvertently. That's the one I put up. So
no, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So if you had the other one,
do not buy Cheryl Brin's book.
I use a method called for the Mac called the Keyboard Maestro, and it lets me just with a tap any string of text that I type a lot, bang, it goes right out. And so I highly recommend it. Now, what is this? This is METI. Yes. So I see. I tapped the wrong thing. There, shouting at the cosmos.
Got it.
Basically, the notion is that that we're learning so much about the cosmos so fast, so fast. 20 years ago, we didn't know of any planets outside our solar system. Now it's verging on 10,000. When you're learning about the galaxy so fast, what's your hurry? 10 years from now, we may know some reason why we didn't want to go yoo-hoo. But the other aspect of it is UFOs. And I've long been highly critical of this UFO fetishism because for so many reasons. For example, there are 1 million times more cameras on Earth today actively available for instant use than there were in the 1950s. So why are all the UFOs getting fuzzier every single year? The notion I have in one of my short stories called Those Eyes, which is also in that best of collection, is that the purported behavior of these UFOs is almost identical to what our ancestors used to deem as the behavior of elves. Sneaking around at the edge of the firelight, kidnapping people, probing them, messing with their heads, exchanging their babies for changelings, sexual things happening when you're helpless and in the dark. That puts a burden of proof on those who say it's aliens. Now, it may be, but in which case they are nasty little bastards. In which case I say, go Air Force, shoot the bastards down. And whenever I'm on radio, I say, you who out there, if you're listening, tell your parents that we want to meet them. Or else in my novel Existence, this woman astronaut's exploring the asteroid belt and finding signs of previous von Neumann probes out there. And she basically is running this blog broadcasting to the universe about the different theories for what might have happened there. And one of them is, if you've been meddling in us, our civilization, we hereby call for a lawyer to help us sue the fuck out of you. Excuse me. I think our politics, the best, well, not the best and not the most likely, but the most consistently apropos explanation for American politics across the last half dozen years is that we are a very popular reality show. Oh, those humans. And that we were starting to make sense and grow up a bit, and ratings were falling.
So stir the pot.
So what better approach than inflicting on us a proved reality star? But then again, I'm verging on dangerous territory there. Now, as far as UAPs are concerned, yes, I do have, and I'm going to put it in chat, I do have an essay about that. One reason why I have refused security clearances, even though until recently I was speaking almost every year at CIA, is because I am free to speculate. And I speculate an explanation for these recent UAPs, the so-called Tic Tacs, because the explanations that are being offered online are completely nuts. I mean, non-physical warp drive, cancellations of inertia. How about we go with an explanation that's compatible with the laws of physics?
Well, one could argue that there are known laws of physics and there are unknown laws of physics, right?
Yeah, but you know what? Occam's razor says, let's start with things that are compatible with what we see and what we know. For instance, has anybody actually examined these images extremely closely to see if any light is passing through them from the background behind them? Yes, they're glowing and all that sort of thing, but if there is any light passing through them, then it settles one thing. They are not physical, massive objects that are suddenly swerving in non-inertial, non-Einsteinian, non-Newtonian ways. They are instead effects in the air, glowing effects. And those can move around. They have no inertia. A cat laser can, if you whip it back and forth like this quickly enough, can move faster than the speed of light because it's not a physical thing. That dot is not a physical thing. It's an effect.
So what do you make of like the Tic Tac stories from people like David Fravor? Like how would you explain that in that sort of context?
An atmospheric effect that's induced by technology. If you can create a dot in space, because that's what it looks like. It's a glowing dot. Excuse me. It does not look like a ship. It does not look like a physical object. It looks like a glowing dot.
So then
how about we assume that may be what it is? Because then you can make a glowing dot move all over the place.
So then the intent would be like cats for us to have our attention drawn to it.
It's a freaking cat laser. Until recently, the Navy pilots were flying planes called Tomcats.
Well, that's a little conspiratorial, no?
That's a bit of a leap.
Look, if you're gonna blame me for seeing something, then that one's a big of a leap.
Sorry, it is totally plausible conspiracy theory that Navy pilots would be used as intelligent, well-equipped testers of both their detection systems and the system you're testing on them. It happens all the time. It's called spoofing.
But do you think you can pick up a laser dot like that? Listen, is an effect.
If you had a powerful... Now, you cannot, with your hand laser, make a dot that appears in midair. There is a way to do that. It's already being done commercially. There is a way to cause a dot to appear mid-air. It's a bit more complicated. It requires that, by the way, these are all happening off at sea, off naval test ranges, and nobody talks about the ships that are within visible distance of these effects. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Look, I'm not saying it's not aliens. I'm just saying there's stuff, there's possibilities that are so vastly more plausible.
More likely, right?
Actually describe what we are actually seeing.
It was, and I don't mean to bring this up, but it was pretty funny because you and I are on a similar email chain that comes from Jack Sarfati, and you guys got into it a little bit.
He was the one who was rude first, so I just
Jack rude.
I just asked to be removed from the list. I mean, he issues polysyllabic, incantatory physics, speculative, far out sci-fi explanations for things that don't require them. Now, mind you, I am somebody who has offered polysyllabic sci-fi things many times. I just label them properly. In my novel Earth, for example, I speculate that if you could make a small black hole, and if it could serve as a mirror to gravity waves, then if you set two of them up on opposite sides of a gravitationally excited object, you would imitate a laser, which has mirrors on both sides of a molecularly or energetically excited photo generating medium. That's the essence of a laser. So if you were to be able to set up micro black holes on both sides of an excited medium, say the core of the Earth, you could make something called a gravity laser. And it turns out to be a strong plot point in my novel, which is called Earth. And I'll give you a spoiler. It results in changes in the Earth's mantle, creating streaks through the mantle that start resembling a nervous system. And then I bring in an interesting factoid. The mantle of the Earth is mostly made of perovskites, a mineral form which is also among the highest temperature superconductors. You start to see where that's leading?
Keep us going.
All right, guys, I have to...
All right, you got to go to Costco. We appreciate your time. Before you go, though, could you tell folks where they can find you, where they can find your books, and if they want to learn more about your work, how they can do that?
Okay, well, first off, I'm tapping Keyboard Maestro. DavidBrin.com is my website, but I'm also going to supply my blog, which is called Contrary Brin, and has one of the smartest and most erudite and politely, mostly, argumentative comment sections online. It can get a bit political, but then again, I try to oscillate that with news about science fiction and news about science, about space and physics and stuff like that. But I want to thank you guys. I think you're doing valuable work. I think the whole notion of a singularity exploring bunch of brave guys willing to question their own assumptions. This is the attitude that I believe will get us out of phase 8 of the American Civil War. And what the heck, I will add.
Do you think, though, real quick before you go, you say phase 8, but you think phase 8 is the last phase of the Civil War? Can we finally put this to bed, or do you think there's going to be a phase 9?
God, I hope so, because we seem to be verging on a hot phase 9, and there are those who want it. Especially if we do show signs of waking up, rediscovering negotiation, and being the sleeping giant that wakes up. Because there are powers in this world who that prospect terrifies. Because when a Periclean enlightenment rediscovers some degree of stability and wisdom, there is absolutely no stopping it. And we are still, even under our present circumstances, by far the most creative civilization the world has ever seen. And if we're unleashed from this crippling internal abnormality, then I believe that that the question of who's going to be leading the next century would be settled. So, and with that,
thank you, sir.
You will bid us adieu. Make sure you grab one of those. Oh, I guess you're not going to grab one of those hot dogs at Costco, but you know, we really appreciate your time. Check out David Brin's work, The Ancient Ones. He's also got an anthology of his best short writings. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today, David. It was truly a pleasure. And hopefully we can be a tiny, tiny spark in that Periclean renaissance that you so describe.
And from such things become the flames, from such sparks become the flames that light the world.
Thank you, brother. Bye-bye, David.
So much.
All right. I'm now like hankering for a Costco hot dog.
Are you
personally?
I had to think about this for a second, but I realized where he was going with the perovskites being in the mantle. If we want to hit that real quick,
yeah. Because I think
he's like, so you know where this is going. I'm like,
it took me a second. Took me a second.
Well, I think. Can I just take a guess?
Please, yeah, go for it. I could be wrong, but I'm guessing.
I'm sure I will be. I have a feeling he's saying like something in the mantle is messing with something in the atmosphere that's causing this effect that people are seeing. Is that something close?
No, I think it's even further than that. So I believe I heard him say that the changes from the black holes were causing the mantle to start to operate like a nervous system. I heard him say that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then if the mantle's mostly made up of superconductors, they would operate like neurons, and then the Earth becomes a thinking brain. That's my guess as to where we're going with that. I'm going to have to go read the novel now. I'm going to have to go read the novel. Just add another one to the damn list.
I think what happened is he sort of put that out there, and we all were like, wait a second, can we think about that? And he's like, Clearly, none of you idiots know what I'm talking about. Let's wrap this up. And I was like, well, that's not fair. Give us a second here. That's a crazy concept.
It took me a minute. I think that's where we're going now. I'm going to go have to read the book and report back.
Hey, listen, man. I mean, look, I don't know why I'm not allowed. Well, I don't know. Maybe I could be, if I had understood it on that level, I could have laughed at it, because that's a wild theory. But guess what else is a wild theory? Just as wild as that. Space aliens extraterrestrials coming from other planets.
I'm markedly less wild.
I'm sorry, and maybe this is my bias coming out, but dude, like, if you're gonna be throwing that idea around and the idea of tomcats being called tomcats because they're chasing, adult-sized laser pointers, like, that's fucking hilarious. Like,
so I also want to point out that we can sum up our history into the basis of two major quotes, both of which are amongst my favorite. One comes from Conan the Barbarian, that is all happiness comes from driving my enemies before me and hearing the lamentations of their women. So that's obviously really important. The other is that fermentation may be it's just such a great one. And the other is that fermentation may be a more important invention than fire. So I think that according to David Brin, that sums up the importance of our history as a species. Taking the women and drinking the beer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was beer, brutality.
But he's kind of right.
And harems.
But he's kind of right, I think, on that.
Somebody else was pushing him in the chat earlier, and I didn't get to it, but they were pushing him back on, well, do women have no agency of their own, to say that men were all driving the harems. And there has to be something to be said for, brute force in medieval times.
Then, yeah, and even, you go to,
there it is. Ryan nailed it.
Beer, brutality, boobs. The 3 Bs.
The 3 Bs.
But yeah, I mean, really, yeah. You go to ancient history, even pre-medieval times, and yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, there was not a lot of female agency. We get a few female rulers in Egypt and maybe 1 or 2 in other areas, but that was about it for a long time.
Do you wonder? I always wonder about written history, because written history is always ruled by
the victors.
Written by the victors, right? So I wonder how many lost civilizations or lost cultures there are that did have female leadership that were. But I guess if it was wiped out, then that speaks to brutality and brute force, right?
Well, when he said that we were the greatest civilization to ever roam or ever exist, essentially, on the planet, I was like, well, are we sure about that?
Right.
Well, we're the most technologically advanced. I don't know if that's what we're marketing.
But are we sure about that?
Fair enough. I mean, we can point to maybe the Atlanteans.
This is a really, really old planet. And when you look at some of these ancient structures, and I hate the idea of this scapegoat of these ancient structures were built by aliens. Why can't humans be capable of doing that? Just because we couldn't think of how they did it, it's absurd to me.
Well, you think there'd be something in the fossil records between us and like a lost technological civilization between us and the dinosaurs. Like,
I mean, maybe there is, man, but the Earth's a weird place. Like, I mean, it is a brutal atmosphere that has been through seismic changes, and those things can be erased depending on what they were very easy. Like, could you imagine if we could take a Dyson vacuum cleaner to the Sahara Desert?
Right, it'd be gone. There'd be no trace of it in a century.
But besides that, I mean, what's underneath that desert that we haven't really even looked at?
Right.
So.
Right, I think your point about the atmosphere and the brutality of it, and think about technology and how quickly those sorts of things can break down,
especially when it's hit with volcanic ash, or lava or magma.
Simple erosion.
Erosion, yeah. I mean, like glacial shifts. Like, I don't care what Lamborghini you built back then. Like, there's a chance that we may never ever get to even see a remnants of it.
Right. Now, if there's pyramids on the moon or Mars, that's a different story.
But that doesn't necessarily mean they're ours. And if we go back to wagers, I'm not counting that plausibility out, Lou, but I don't think I'm betting on it either.
No, I'm not betting on it either. I'm not betting on it either. But I mean, but then then again, the Occam's razor on if we did find pyramids on the moon or Mars, Occam's razor would be like, yeah, that probably started here,
right,
or started there and came here,
right.
Rather
than being extrasolar.
Bad enough nuclear holocaust could erase remnants of an existing civilization. It could.
It would just be literally one enormous asteroid.
That would work too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be self-induced.
A nuclear. Yeah. It doesn't have to be self-induced. I mean, maybe it's just something that I can't imagine how you could get to the moon or Mars and not sort of be aware of the incoming, cataclysmic rock. But
well, even if you're aware of it, that's why you're on the moon or Mars, and we couldn't get off Earth quick enough. And the other thing that's interesting is if you look at the existence of us as a species, right? We've got as a technological civilization. I'll say we go back to maybe 8,000 BC at the earliest in places like Peru, Mesopotamia, where we see some tool.
Göbekli Tepe is actually quite a bit older than that. It goes back to like 13,000 years ago.
So we're still talking.
Supposedly. Yeah, let me Google it. But I think
so. Göbekli Tepe was interesting because it supposedly is a hunter-gatherer society that had advanced tool making, which is unusual because we always associate that sort of technological advancement with agrarian societies, right?
But so my point, and that does, even though it elongates the time frame, it doesn't devalue the point that I was going to say, which is the fossil record of 15,000 years is not very deep, and that's the thing. You've got dinosaurs that existed from close to 100 million years, which was like 350 to 265 million years ago, something like I'm off, obviously, by millions of years, but you have an extremely long expanse. Whereas human civilization, as we know, it's been around, so say 13,000 BC, that's 15,000 years. Our fossil record is not very deep in terms of the actual depth in the earth that it would exist. So something that was particularly catastrophic could plausibly eliminate all evidence of a civilization. Again, I'm not betting on this, but it's an interesting thing to think about.
Well, yeah, and there are non-mainstream archaeologists who speculate about this sort of thing quite often, actually. It's very
66 million years ago for dinosaurs. I guess I was way off. I just saw Sean said that.
Yeah.
Well, they died off 66 million years ago, but they lived much longer than that.
But even with that said, I mean, I don't think would it be fair to say that archaeologists haven't found every species of dinosaur out there. And there'll probably be species and artifacts that will just completely evaporated.
Well, look at the Brontosaurus. When I was a kid, the Brontosaurus was a dinosaur, and then it wasn't until the last 20 years that they realized, we put a bunch of different dinosaurs together. Our bad.
I believe that they've come back and said the Brontosaurus is indeed a dinosaur, though. Or was that was Triceratops? It was Triceratops. I apologize.
Well, I thought they went from Brontosaurus to Brachiosaurus, and then they changed it again.
Well, there's multiple different dinosaurs that were that size. It was my understanding that the Brontosaurus was an amalgam of multiple different species of dinosaur.
Correct. It was. And I was confused.
So the actual Brontosaurus, that thing doesn't exist.
I believe
there is no
so.
Brontosaurus as a species. Okay. Yeah, right.
Yeah, can somebody look that up, please?
Yeah, I think Brachiosaurus.
I looked up Göbekli Tepe.
I'm talking about the audience.
I think it was Apatosaurus, Brachiosaurus, maybe Argentinosaurus. That they had the bones all mixed together and made an amalgam that they called the Brontosaurus. Someone's gonna fact check me on that, and would be way off, but that's.
Well, if somebody wants to go on a deep hole on the history of the Brontosaurus, go for it.
Yeah, please do. If you could report back to us, that would be fantastic. Why don't we pivot back real quick, because you sent me a couple articles today, Brooks. I wanted to.
I found some cool ones.
Yeah, let's take a look here. Let's see if I can get these.
While you're pulling those up, I'm wagering that nuclear fusion does happen in the next couple decades.
You think so?
Yeah, I do.
You think it's happened already somewhere within, say, the DOE or something?
Skunk Works somewhere? No, I don't. I don't think so. I don't think that's one that there's no point in slow rolling it. It does so much so quickly.
This was interesting. This was something that we were looking at today. And I want to get your arguments on this, Brooks, because so the IRS, for those of you who don't know, the IRS was putting together a plan to ensure that anybody who wanted to access the irs.gov would have to go through a facial recognition technology in order to access their information and be able to utilize the portal.
On employees or
no? If you wanted to see your own tax records,
wow,
or file your taxes.
Right, or file your tax. Now, I believe that was only filing your tax online. Like, a lot of people don't actually have their, like, I have my irs.gov set up so I can go access it. And right now I use a username and password. But they were trying to set it up so that you had to use the facial recognition technology in order to access it. And there was waves of criticism from both Republicans and Democrats on this issue, and the IRS pulled back. They're like, "Okay, that's our bad. we're not gonna move forward with this."
What was the argument? I mean, sometimes the libertarian in me is like, I totally understand this,
right?
Like, they shouldn't have our faces. Why do they need our faces? Like,
I definitely don't need your face.
But at the same time, like, if we're getting to the singularity, this is gonna be a thing.
So it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. Regardless, it just shouldn't. The federal government should not have the records of every taxpayer's facial recognition. I mean, they get your fingerprints.
So make that argument. Why not?
I mean, it's very easy. You look at the machine learning and artificial intelligence software that's out there, and you don't even need a cop to pull you over for a speeding ticket anymore. A red light sees you going 15 miles over the speed limit, clocks your face, identifies that you were the one in the driver's seat, matches it to your license plate, and suddenly you've got a ticket in the mail, and we're not following due process of law.
But if you had facial recognition, you'd probably recognize that wasn't me driving. I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
And I mean, I guess that you could make that argument as well, but really, ultimately, I mean, I'm a firm believer in the privacy laws. In fact, one of the other things I almost sent to you was Europe's pushback of telling Elon to go fuck himself. They'd be happy to not have Facebook and Instagram anymore. But, you know, I'm a huge
you're talking about Zuckerberg. You're talking about Zuckerberg.
Yeah. What did I say? Elon? Yeah. Sorry, Zuckerberg.
Yes. Zuckerberg said he threatened the EU and said what? And said that he was going to. Oh, I remember what it was.
Because they're going to pull out because he didn't want to follow their privacy laws.
Well, I thought it was more than just the privacy laws. I thought it had to do with processing the data. I think that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the European sovereign data had to be processed on European sovereign servers. Yeah.
Right, and Zuckerberg said no. We'll shut down Instagram and Facebook in the EU if you make us process data on your soil. I don't quite understand the depth of that or like why that matters, but I'm sure.
There's a lot to do. So keep in mind, there's a lot of information, even on Facebook and Instagram, and probably in terms of just user data and not like the metadata, not so much the actual privacy data, but that would be considered sovereign information. I mean, and sometimes it's as simple as there's someone sitting in Parliament who logs on, and if that data is getting processed in the U.S., they don't have any control of what gets pulled, what gets identified. And there's a lot you can do. I mean, you're familiar with how much information you can get from just simple analytical metadata.
Right.
They don't want Zuckerberg to have the ability to go through all of that on his terms, on the service he wants it on, and not have some sovereign control of it.
Right. No, that makes sense. Just getting back to the facial recognition technology, we have fans, amazing fans, Grant, Nakashi, who make deep fakes of us all the time, and it's hilarious. And like, there's fun to be had. Is this like, I guess I don't understand why you would want, because you can fake face data. Okay, so there's a couple things here. One is people who can't afford, who don't have a device that, a smartphone, something like that.
There's a barrier to entry, right?
There's a barrier to entry for people who don't have these sorts of devices. But on top of that, you could fake this sort of stuff. Like two-factor authentication seems like a much smarter way to go about this rather than trying to use facial recognition technology. I guess I just don't quite get why they were trying to do it. And do you think there is some deep state fascist ideology that was driving it, or
I don't know that I'm going to call it deep state fascist, but yeah, I think this is a cheap bid to have the Department of Justice have access to the facial patterns of every person who wants to log into the portal. I think that's all it was.
Right.
I mean, what other benefit do you get out of it? And who's really that worried about? I mean, most people who log into the IRS's portal are doing it to see where's my tax return. I would say that's like probably 80% of the traffic, right?
I mean, could it be just something as simple as, well, I mean, a lot of Americans have, including myself, have bought into using a facial recognition to log into your phone.
Right,
and that's fair. But it's one thing to have.
How many people gave all their data to Facebook and Instagram on that? What do I look like when I get older? App.
Oh well, and that's the thing, right? Is how many times do we think that our stripper name is our first pet and the street we're born on? Those are your security questions, morons. Like
Gizmo Tropicana.
Yeah, exactly. You know, don't go and just post that out there for everyone to see. It's a phishing scam. Like it's.
Well, I mean, but again, like, okay, so let me ask you this, Brooks. In 50 years,
yeah, it's not going to matter. You're absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Like when there's automated cars and giving tickets are like an archaic thing because all vehicles now are controlled by AI. Like, and you're walking down the street and you're, like that facial recognition software is picking ads for you as you're walking by billboards that are curtailed for you.
Oh, billboards! Yeah, your augmented reality goggles are going to be shooting you whatever ads you want to. Yeah. It's going to be.
So I mean, I guess my question is like, do we really want to fight this? Like, it's an inevitability. I guess
it is. But point. I mean, think about how many inevitabilities, particularly when it comes to our privacy, that we're going to have to deal with over the next coming decades. I'd like to elongate it till we have the legislature in place to at least protect us a little bit better. Because right now, and who knows what they would do in terms of privacy policy for that data, but I don't have any reassurance that the federal government wouldn't sell my facial recognition stuff to anyone from Walmart to whomever else wants it,
I mean, maybe I don't know that the government would do that, but I mean, either way,
I don't know that the government would do that. Is like the sweetest thing I've ever heard.
Well, I mean, like, what they're going to sell the government's going to collect and sell my data?
Why not? I mean,
that's true. That's a fair
point. Well, I would say I would be more worried of government collecting that kind of data and then being able to determine elections or public discourse.
You could absolutely
things like that. That would be my fear. I could really give a shit about a corporation knowing what color socks I like. Like for me, it's like they've already got it, dude. That dam has been opened. Like all of us, who've got a smartphone, who we all have metadata that's being collected through the 14 billion different apps that we all use every day, and it's over. Like your privacy is gone.
I agree.
They're listening to you when you hump. Like there's did you ever see Edward Snowden take apart a phone and point out where the hidden cameras and the microphones are in these things? Like
I've seen bits of it, and I don't trust me. I don't doubt that. In fact, Mike's heard me numerous times complain about how it's not listening to you. Okay. Like, and then everything, I guarantee you, I'm going to have David Brin books like being recommended to me for the next 3 weeks now, no doubt there. But my bigger concern, I should say, is actually more of from a police state perspective that I just don't think the federal government should have everyone's biometric data. I mean, it's one thing if you've committed a crime and they're going to take it because that's just, how we set the legislature. But it's another thing to just have that out there.
It's the Minority Report, right? I mean, that's the fear. The fear is that they're going to start collecting that data and using it to spy on you when you have not done anything wrong yet.
But they're doing that now.
They're
doing that now.
So I don't want to give them more tools to make that plausible, to make that more effective.
I guess my point is they already have the tools. Like they don't need your permissions. They don't need the IRS to do this. Well, they've probably already done it.
You think that they've somehow otherwise? I mean, because it's not exactly like a single picture of you does your facial scan in terms of facial recognition for machine learning. It takes a a few, you got to sit in a sync. That's why I move around a lot while we're on the camera, you know, trying to dodge it at any second so that it can't get a bunch of stills of me. No, but I doubt that they have facial recognition data for everybody. I do doubt that. Now, you know, I think someone in the chat asked, what about DNA samples? Yeah, it's inevitable. At some point, our ID card's probably going to have our DNA signature on it. Like, we're going to get to that point. But as far as currently, I don't think that we're in a position where I want my federal government to have my biometrics.
Yeah, I hear that. I get that.
I'm wondering what you guys think about this though. Like, what do you think there is a cap on the value of biometrics? Like, do you think that we could get to a point where we reach a limit? Like, okay, we've collected all the biometrics we can. We can pretty much predict any human behavior, and we don't really need to collect it anymore.
Well, I don't think you can predict it on an individual level. You can only predict it. And this is what, like, I love Foundation, Isaac Asimov. Like, I don't know if you guys have watched Foundation yet or read the books, but one of the books.
They're books, Michael.
I know, Brooks. I know. I knew it the second it came out of my mouth. I knew what was about to happen. But that being said, one of the interesting things about it, the mathematician, like he can use an algorithm to understand what's going to happen in the meta, what's going to happen in the big scheme of humanity, for all of humanity. Yeah. But you can't. Yeah, exactly. But you can't predict what's going to happen on an individual level. Those are just you just can't predict.
Well, I guess I mean, not individuals, but like to predict what trends. I guess.
Yes,
exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. At what point? I think it's. Yeah. I don't know.
Is the show good?
It's good. I mean, I haven't read the books, so I say yes. But people who have read the books, I don't know. You have to ask them.
I'll have to find
I have to ask Aaron Desario. Aaron's in the chat. You should tell us
what channel is it on, or what app?
It's on HBO.
Is it HBO?
What's it called
now? HBO now. Foundation. It's awesome.
It's Asimov's like biggest series, and honestly, something that's probably pretty hard to turn into a TV show. So if they do a good job, then that's awesome.
I thought it was fantastic. We'll wait and see what Aaron has to say. Simon Fly says, think of the data people give away already every time you make a transaction with a card, for example. That's why big governments want to get rid of cash. NMUAP says, just because it's inevitable does not mean we should accept it.
Agreed.
The government is already one knuckle deep in everyone. Not sure we need another
two.
Well,
in all fairness, if they're one knuckle deep, I'm just getting teased. So you might as well stick the other two in there.
I mean, let's get this price exam.
Oh, sorry. It's on Apple TV, not HBO. Sorry about that. God, everyone's like, because come on, Mataluni.
I just bit the bullet and paid for the year subscription on Disney Plus because I really wanted to check out the news, this Boba Fett, because I've been seeing things that are it's a slow burn.
Yeah.
Really?
I got one more episode.
We just started watching The Expanse for the first time. I haven't seen it yet.
Back where you and I met, where I used to host trivia, was the owners recommended that show, and phenomenal show.
Yeah.
And who are we talking to?
First season's a bit of a slow burn too, because it's a lot of build up.
Oh, that's what it was. It was Avi who we were talking to, who's like, I don't do shows that don't have that have sci-fi, that have fiction in it, that break laws
that have
physics.
Bad physics. Yeah.
I was like, well, then watch The Expanse, because you're talking about a show that literally spends a lot of effort obeying the laws of physics. That's what I loved about, or one of the things I loved about that show.
Yeah, we have a lot of folks in the who love The Expanse as well, and Aaron says he's loving Boba Fett.
I don't know if I love it. I mean, he's not
like
a bounty hunter anymore. I loved Mandalorian. Okay. Yeah, I thought Mandalorian was great. And this has got hints of it, but I just like, I'd rather see a story about a bounty hunter. like the original bounty hunter. Yeah.
So it's too much the hero's journey, origin story. What?
They made him a good guy.
So they turned around the character.
Yeah.
Is it a reboot?
He takes over Jabba's seat, right?
It's the same. Yeah, he takes over Jabba the Hutt, who's a mobster. He's a ruthless mobster.
So now he's a mobster with a heart of gold.
Yes. That's exactly right. He's a mobster with a heart of gold, ruling with a fair fist.
Thanks, Disney.
I don't know. I mean, I still like it, but part of me is like, man, this could be so much better.
First off, I really now need to know if the Lucas fanfic was, or the erotic fanfic was big enough for Lucasfilm to get involved. It's probably high quality stuff.
So for those of you just listening, Kathy Splash says, Lucasfilm shut down my Star Wars erotica fanfic site right before the 2015 film. Still locked to this day. Ow, what?
Oh my God.
Was it a big site?
Can you just change the name of it?
That's impressive.
That's sucks.
Like, I feel like that's bucket list material. Have erotic fan fiction that's so deleterious that Disney comes after you.
Oh,
that's
man. Speaking of giant corporations and conspiracy theories, here's an interesting piece of news for you guys. Let's see if I can. Am I sharing screen? No.
Not yet.
Oh, there we go.
Not yet.
All right. Facebook market cap falls below 600 billion, which could actually help it dodge new antitrust scrutiny. So we were telling you guys last week when we were here how the stock fell just dramatically after a reduced earnings report. From I think the market cap was like $1 trillion, or was it more than that? 1.2 trillion, something like that.
I know it dropped 273 billion.
Okay,
right?
so maybe it wasn't quite $1 trillion yet. But it's now down to 600 billion, which could help it recede under the market cap necessary to be considered a trust liability.
Yeah, an antitrust. So apparently the Sherman antitrust laws, or whatever their newest equivalent is, has a threshold of $600 billion exactly. Seriously. To be over it is exactly $600 billion. And if you're over it, then you start to set off all of these legislative triggers. If you're below it, you just fly under the radar. The market cap of Facebook is currently $599.32 billion, something like that. So it's like just flirting with that number.
And
Did
then
I get it on the nose, yes.
We just need to buy one more Oculus headset.
Right.
Well, and then he threatened to pull out of Europe, which could have sent the stock swirling down.
Trying to stay below the level, man. You don't want to get torn apart. If you have to go split Facebook and Instagram and split out Oculus as its own company and do all, you don't want to have to do all that.
But I mean, but if Facebook ends up being MySpace, I think that'd be a good thing, right?
I miss Tom.
I don't.
Tom, he was everyone's friend, though.
He was my friend, man.
At least he wasn't a Zuckerbot,
right? Zuckerberg never friended me like that.
Yeah, he didn't friend me either.
There was no personal touch. Like he didn't hand me, the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah, and I spend like $3 million a year with those guys. And he's never even said hi to me. Aaron Desario says, I've said this before, but as a former LucasArts employee, I can say that George ruined Star Wars long before Disney did.
I mean, you can't disagree with that.
They're fighting words for sure.
As soon as Jar Jar wasn't a Sith Lord, it was just over. Right?
Here's what I'll say. Here's what I'll say to this, Aaron, and please go look this up. I used to think the exact same thing as this statement. And then I heard Dave Filoni talk about the prequels and the titles and their meanings. And not only the titles, but the scores that were done by John Williams. It is amazing. It turned around my entire thinking process.
Misa saying you crazy.
On the whole thing. And I also look, man, you throw that out there. There's also a really good theory that Jar Jar Binks was actually supposed to be a Sith Lord.
Jar Jar was a Sith Lord. That's what I just said. Yeah, that's
if that was written in and got ignored or just
they had to scrap it because everyone hated Jar Jar. That's at least the theory.
It would have been the best reveal at Revenge of the Sith if that guy was helping orchestrate all of this. It would have been cool. I mean, look at Jar Jar Binks' eyes. That dude's evil. That dude is evil.
If you go back and watch, there's like 20-minute long. Oh, he came. Aaron said George came out against fan theory. There's like a 20-minute long YouTube video that shows all the things that Jar Jar does in the background that makes sense only if he is indeed a Dark Lord of the Sith.
Well, I mean, just their first meeting when he first meets the two Jedi in this swamp, and he's talking about how he's been banished, he's like, "Follow me into the water," or whatever he does. His first move to jump into the water is like a 12-foot somersault double black flip perfectly into the water with no splash. And he's supposed to be this goofy, like, idiot, like just wandering through the movie.
Wait. He was amphibious, like, right?
Yeah, but still, that doesn't mean that he's got like Olympic gold diving requirements. Like, this guy's got like a +20 to dive if he was a D&D character.
Right. I mean, the guy got banished because he was so dumb and clumsy.
But his dumb clumsiness consistently saves them and gets things to happen. And then on top of that, you also have to point out he's from the same planet the Emperor's from, so they were in cahoots. I refuse to accept anything that the original story was supposed to be that Jar Jar was a Sith Lord. You can tell me anything you want to. I know that in my heart of hearts that's what it was supposed to be.
Well, I mean, you could take a self-fulfilling prophecy, overlay it on bad storytelling, and come up with whatever you want. So
it makes me feel better, Mike. It makes me feel better. Okay.
I mean, dude, I'm gonna tell you something right now.
Do you want to see Jar Jar the Sith Lord?
Watch this jump. This is the first meeting he has with the Jedi. Okay. Watch this. Look at this. Watch this.
That's a gold every time.
Are you kidding me?
Splash everything.
Look at that jump, dude. He's supposed to be a bumbling idiot. Look at that. That's like a snowboarder's move without the snowboard.
And then do you want to see two more movies of Jar Jar wreaking havoc as a Sith Lord? Or do you want to see Anakin and Queen Amidala rolling around in fucking sunflowers? Yeah. Which do you want to see?
I'm with you.
Sunflowers.
I mean, dude, look at these eyes. This doesn't scream evil to you?
Darth Maul's got the same eyes, man.
I do really love the passion that you bring to this argument.
Okay, yeah. I got to paint this picture for you guys, right? So, for those of you who don't know this about me, when I was 11, I was in a gasoline explosion. I got severely burned. I have skin grafts on my legs. They told me I'd never probably walk again. I told them that wasn't going to work for me, so I did a lot of rehab and figured out how to walk again. The entire thing I was waiting for to get out of this fucking hospital that I was in for 6 months was in 1999 to go see episode 1. I've been waiting. Like, I'm getting the scabs scraped off of my body every day. I'm like going through hell, just waiting to go see the new Star Wars movie. I get out of the hospital. We finally get to go see it at the Dollar Theater at this point. I go and see this movie. And I'm just like, well, I just put me back in the fucking hospital.
Right.
Oh my God.
Tell me now.
Just do it, right? So I need something, Mike. I need something that's going to recreate the magic for me.
I hear you, and I'm with you.
Look at these eyes. Does this look like the eyes of someone you could trust?
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
Definitely not. Nigel says, well, this conversation is taking a dive.
That probably belongs.
You're telling me nobody enjoyed that breakdown of Jar Jar Binks being a possible Sith Lord?
I will say that a lot of people are agreeing with me. He's part toad. Of course, he can dive. He's a water creature. It's natural. I mean, I'm just saying, like, if you want to take Occam's razor on this, but I know we all need things to believe in. Whew.
I mean, it would have been. Look, this is the last thing I'll say. I swear to God.
No.
If it had been revealed in either part 2 or part 3 that this guy was a Sith Lord, it would have been as crazy as a reveal of Darth Vader saying, "I'm your father" to Luke.
It would have been better than Kaiser Sose being Kevin Spacey.
For sure. People would have lost their shit if this guy had turned out to be a Sith Lord. It would have been an awesome move. But all right, that's it. I'm done.
I agree. No, I think it would have been. It would have worked. It would have been dope. Oh, Nigel says maybe Brin's back from Costco by now.
We got to get his take on this.
You can hop back in.
Oh my God, that Costco pizza sucks. But you want to know something? I don't like it. But it's the I think it's the highest selling pizza chain in America.
They're right? The highest selling hot dog vendor. Costco sells, what is it, like 6 times the number of hot dogs as all Major League Baseball parks combined every year, or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. And McDonald's is the world's largest toy distributor. So next time you want some fun facts.
That's interesting.
Brooks is for those of you who don't know, Brooks is Brooks and I met because he was our trivia guru. We used to go to trivia every Tuesday night, and the amount of useless knowledge this man is filled with, it's extraordinary.
That's why I have 0 friends.
We're your friends, Brooks.
And I appreciate that.
And you have people here listening and watching now who want to be your friend.
What?
Oh, speaking of that, Brooks just went back and scrubbed his entire Twitter account so that he could be on Twitter now.
I found my Twitter account from 2009, back when Twitter first came out, and I went through it. And for all of your sakes, I scrubbed it.
Are you the same person that you were in 2000?
No, clearly. I mean, I just watch my mouth a little bit better now. I was a touch uncouth.
We all are. Men, I mean, I think all men are a touch uncouth from like
I know some pretty uncouth women.
29 to 30.
Yeah, I'm married to one.
Oh, yeah. Dude, Allison is the best.
Yeah, she's got a mouth on her though.
She might be more brazen than you are, Brooks, I believe.
I've had to tone it down just so that to kind of find balance in our force.
You want to know what I found hilarious about today's discussion? Christopher Plain and Jazz Shaw hated it.
I know. I know. Well, two things. Number one, Jazz Shaw showed up and he just hated. We were talking politics. He didn't want anything to do with that.
Right.
And then David shit on the ET hypothesis. And he hated that. And then pretty much the same for Christopher Plain. I think he was a fan of David Brin until he said the Tic Tac was a cat laser,
cat toy. Yeah. I mean, look, I think not too long ago we were talking about plasma balls being created within labs to literally create what looked like a floating Tic Tac in the middle of the room.
For that episode.
Look,
yeah.
Bottom line is, if you want people on the other side to have an open mind, you got to have an open mind too. Like you can't have it both ways. Like I'm open-minded to the ET hypothesis. I'm also open-minded to a cat laser. Like until we have evidence,
I'm also open-minded to being U.S. Tech. Like, what's wrong with finding the answer on it?
Right.
No, I think that makes sense. And honestly, the faster that I can just watch movies in the sky, the happier I'll be. You know what I mean? Like when we can use that technology to watch Jar Jar Binks be a Sith Lord in the sky.
That'd be pretty dope.
Well, you know what I think's got a good shot at doing something like that? Drone swarm tech. I mean, if you can get them as small as pixels.
Tiny micro drones, like pixels. Oh, damn, bro. I hadn't even thought. I've never considered that.
Really? I thought we talked about that before. That's why I was kind of joking about it.
Well, not being like, I never thought about like the size of a pixel.
Just being an LED. Yeah, just a single LED, each one.
That's wild.
That'd be pretty cool. But I mean, man, now you're talking about like tiny battery technology that would be able to propel a drone with an LED light on it for 2 hours.
So you use the lasers to produce the energy for the LEDs.
Ooh. I don't know anything about that, but it sounds cool.
Because the heat from the laser is energy itself, so you can use the
laser-induced plasma. That's interesting.
Yep.
So for those of you who do want to follow Brooks on Twitter, how do they find you, Brooks?
My Twitter handle, and dear God, I feel for you if you go back and read the old stuff. It's not worth it. Just don't. But it's at striving. It's at striving to thrive.
Striving to thrive.
Yeah, no G. I was cool back then.
It's in the. You didn't have a little acento mark after the end.
I don't think Twitter allowed that. This was back when you had to like literally use like 80 characters or whatever. I was an early adopter and then I quit. I don't know why.
I remember you and I had this conversation a couple years ago about how Twitter was just confusing.
Well, now it is. It used to be you're like, all right, cool. I'm going to use Twitter, and then I tweet my stuff, and I respond to other people, and then now it's just all retweets, and I can't ever find anyone's original content.
Right.
I don't know. I'm old, I guess.
I guess so. Thank y'all so much for joining us today here at the Singularity Lab. It's always a pleasure spending time with you gentlemen, as well as all of you who join us live every single week on Thursdays. Aaron Desario, thank you so much. The Little Goat, Channel Warhorse, Nigel, J. Allen Heineken, Awaiting Aliens. Name. That's a great name.
J. Allen Heineken is such a great name. I can't even. It's up there with what was another good one? Ack was a good one.
Ack.
Yeah.
Pleasure. Thank you guys for joining us. Make sure you check us out on Spotify or Apple Podcast. You can always get these episodes after we go live, usually up in like an hour or so, something like that. If you want to contribute to the show financially, there's a link down below. You can become an official Patreon member and support us here at the Singularity Lab. Join us tomorrow on the Unidentified Celebrity Review. What's going on over there tomorrow?
We're talking to Matthew Zagatis from UAPX. He's also a professor, physics professor, if I'm not mistaken, at the University of Albany. So yeah, that'll be a lot of fun.
Awesome. UAP or Channel Warhorse says UAP technology controls time space. Thank you, Singularity. Well, thank you for joining us today, Channel. Thank you, J. Allen Heineken, and all of you lovely, lovely viewers and listeners. We're going to catch you guys on the flip side. We'll see you. I don't have a show planned for next Thursday yet. I'm going to be figuring that out over the next couple of days, but make sure you join us at the Unidentified Celebrity Review, and we will talk to you guys very, very soon.
Do you want to know about the future? I do. And I know you do too. That's why we do what we do, right here at the Singularity Lab, just for you. Do you want to know about stories about breaking technology? Science? Look right here, I'm looking at my sheet. Marty did it. Why can't you? Remember, this is a public access channel. We rely on your donations, so just hit the Patreon. So we can continue to bring you updated science and technology, breaking news every single day.